Hi, everybody, and welcome to week number 5. We're moving right along here. Back in week number 4, we looked at chapter 5 and we wrapped up the section on financial analysis, and we're moving on to a new section, which I'm going to talk about in just a second. What I do want to point out with chapter 5 is that you have 2 chapters. It's one of only a couple of weeks in the 16-week version of this class that we cover 2 chapters in the week, this week being one of them. We're going to look at chapters 6 and 7. So plan accordingly. The deadlines for everything are just the same. You want to get your homework or your assignments done by 11:59 next Sunday, and but for 2 chapters worth, okay? So like I said, there's only a couple of those. So taking a look at what the chapters are about, let's take a look at the text. So this starts a new section in their text, which we're talking about working capital management, which is kind of the everyday, day in and day out types of things that companies do from a financial management standpoint. Actually spend a fair amount of time on these topics. So working capital management just gives us sort of a little bit shorter term view, looking at how we manage the current assets of the company and or the organization, and how we go about financing those. So looking at chapter 6 then, the start of it. So working capital management, we want to be able to, the objectives for the chapter are explain how working capital management involves financing and controlling the current assets of the firm. That's just the very nature of what working capital management is. You want to recall that management must distinguish between current assets and those that are easily converted to cash and those that are more permanent. And how we go about financing them and working with them is changes based on that distinction. Recognize the financing of an asset that it should be tied to how long the asset is likely to be on the balance sheet. It's not hard to understand that there's certain things that we know will be on the balance sheet for a long time. For example, if we're in the cruise business, we know we intend to keep the asset we call a ship on our balance sheet for a long time, having a long serviceable life. On the other hand, we might not expect that certain other assets would be on the balance sheet for as long a period of time because they serve a short-term purpose. Explain why long-term financing is usually more expensive than short-term financing based on the theory of the term structure of interest rates, which is one of those basic financial concepts. I want you to really understand that. It's not too hard to understand, but make sure you get a solid understanding of that, because that structure is really important in how we look at these and future topics. And we want to recall that risk, as well as profitability, determines the financing plan for current assets. And that picture varies tremendously by the type of organization, the size of the organization, how fast it's growing, all those other types of things. So risk comes into play as well as profitability in determining the financing plan for current assets. Illustrate why expected value analysis, again, a very basic and core financial concept. Expected value analysis may sometimes be employed in working capital management. So chapter 6 gives you a rough introduction to it. The key takeaways are really getting a firm understanding what the term structure of interest rates are, and also understanding expected value analysis. So flipping forward to chapter 7, if I can get to there quickly, here we go. In chapter 7, we are talking about how we're managing current assets themselves. So you want to, by the end of the chapter, you want to be able to recall that current asset management involves the management of cash, marketable securities, accounts receivable, and inventory. Those are the largest and the most important ones on most organizations' balance sheets. Explain what is involved in cash management, all the different ins and outs. Just kind of a minor thing, like, for example, it's not a minor thing at all. It's actually a pretty significant thing. Some of the very largest high-tech companies are profitable, are incredibly profitable, and have a lot of money, and and then have a lot of cash, which actually hurts the value of the company or the price of the stock. Why? Because as an investor, do I want to give Apple money to invest in, put in cash in the bank? No, I mean, I can do that on my own, right? I want them to take that money and invest in some new technologies that are going to continue to make the organization grow. So holding too much cash can actually be a bad thing, which doesn't seem very logical, but it's definitely true from an investor standpoint. You want to explain what is involved in the management of marketable securities, what's all the ins and outs of that, detail the requirements of accounts receivable management. Having been a small business owner, that ends up being an important one. So that's one to pay very close attention to. Determine the level of inventory necessary to enhance sales and profitability. That is based on some of the things we talked about. I want to say it was in chapter 3 or whichever chapter when we talked about forecasting. That comes into play here directly. And you want to be able to understand that the less liquid an asset is, the higher the required return. And that makes sense because the less liquid it is, the harder it is to liquidate it, the less valuable it is, and it requires a higher rate of return to do it. So I think those are the key topics. I think you'll find these chapters interesting if you're going into finance as a career. These are really, really important bedrock kind of foundational types of things that you're learning in the next in these 2 chapters plus the one from next week. Okay, so again, if there's any questions, please let me know sooner than later. Try to get through at least one of the chapters real early in the week, and then that leaves you the second chapter, that you can try to complete during the week. Okay, so again, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out, and I wish you the best of luck. And let me know if you have any questions. Thanks.